where are you at with your mindset? Are you in a needy place of like, I have to find a producer, I have to find the money, I have to do anything to get this project going? Because that's a really not great place to operate from. If you're showing up every day and going, I desperately need a producer, I desperately need financing, that's going to come across in the way you message people, in the way you talk to people, in the way you post. This is Truly Independent, a show that demystifies the indie film journey by documenting the process of releasing independent films in theaters. Each week, Garrett Batty and I, Darren Smith, will update you on our journey, bringing guests to share their insights into the process and answer your questions. Today on the podcast, we chat with our friend Kirk Roos from Heartstrings Media. We talk about how we met, how we're working together now, and how you can apply the same ideas in your own business, your own projects, in moving them forward. Today on Truly Independent, episode 22. All right, welcome everybody. So excited today. We have Garrett with us. Hi, Garrett. How's it going?
Darren, how are you? Of course I'm here. This is our podcast.
And we're joined by our friend Kirk Roos. Oh my gosh, Kirk. Hi. Thanks for joining us.
Is it a live podcast?
Oh, we're
on.
live.
You're on.
Good.
Whatever you say is now going to be held against you.
Good. Don't edit a single thing we say.
Deal. I never do anyway. That's how you do a weekly podcast when you're also releasing movies, is you don't edit. You just release the thing. So let me give the audience a quick bio here of Kirk. Kirk, originally from North Dakota, has been working in Hollyweird for 25 years as an actor, writer, producer. He's the founder of Northern Lights Films, Badlands Features, and Heartstrings Media, where he serves as president and head of development. So, Kirk, we're excited to talk to you today because we know you through Heartstrings. And I want to just briefly, I'm going to try to keep this as short as possible. I know I get wordy on the podcast, but like the way that you and I met, I think is very interesting for the audience. And then we can hear your thoughts on this, because I know you have thoughts on this as well. So I was, months ago, we were looking for investors for the P&A of Faith of Angels. I've been raising money for other projects. So like, I'm constantly thinking about where investors live. And I was like, man, I wonder if they're on LinkedIn, because I would go and search LinkedIn for angel investor and it'd come up with 15,000 results. I'm like, well, there they are. Like, how do I reach these people? So I started DMing, hey, are you interested in film? Have you ever thought about film as an investment? And just nothing came of that. It was a constant struggle every day of like getting up and trying to spend an hour on LinkedIn. And then I realized, well, there's people that are actually posting about and commenting on and talking about film every day on the platform. So I started just following a lot of people, and then your name came up. I kept seeing you liking posts and commenting on posts. And so I would like your comments and then comment on your comments. And we kind of had this back and forth for maybe a week or two. I don't know how much of this you're aware of, but here's the strategy. And then after like 2 weeks of that, then I felt like, okay, now I can do a DM and send Kirk a message, say, hey, seems like we're following a lot of the same people. I'd love to have a chat, just like a get to know you type thing. And then we did. We had like a 30-minute getting to know you Zoom call. And then fast forward a few months, and you guys are coming in with some money for the P&A of Faith of Angels. You're helping with the digital release of the film. And look at what happens from LinkedIn. Like, that's pretty crazy, right?
Yeah. I wasn't on LinkedIn for many years. I mean, I was on there. I think I just had an account, but I didn't do much on there, probably for some of the reasons you said. It's oversaturated with lots of people talking about their own stuff. I think one thing that's great about sales, distribution, any kind of business, any kind of supply and demand, is listening to your buyer. So what I try to do, whether it was LinkedIn or some other thing, go to a festival or a convention or get to know people, it's a lot of asking them, what can we do for you? And I almost said Facebook, on LinkedIn, I hear a lot about what people want us to do for them. But if you come in with an attitude of what can I do for you, you tend to get further in your relationships.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, who had that attitude between you guys? Was it hey, look at what we can do for you. We're going to show you our movie, and you can, and we can help you invest.
I don't know. I feel like I probably led that conversation because I was actively seeking stuff. But I think when you have things that are happening and that are valuable in a marketplace, it attracts and pulls in the people who also want to be a part of that. So you guys are seeking for these type of investments. We had one that was ready right now, and that's kind of how it came together.
Yeah, I'm not going to name names, but there's been a couple other projects that are currently out there on the market that we almost got. And, like you guys, I'm a filmmaker, writer, actor, started in all sorts of creative things. And when we launched Heartstrings, the first couple partners, Brad and Roger and Brian, they all also had creative backgrounds. My partner, Roger, has directed 2 films for PureFlix. So he didn't come from a business angle either. We all learned the business over time. So there's probably a little chicken and egg thing between you and I, Darren, because we were probably commenting and having conversations about the same threads from other people that were posting there. And I'm going to say this politely, but a lot of people are on LinkedIn complaining about the marketplace, complaining about all their, venting about all the reasons why their projects aren't going well, or how do they find that. What we were looking for was a flagship project. And we almost got a couple over the last few years, but the pandemic made things interesting. But we've gotten a few products launched now. We're all creative folks that are trying to work with like-minded people. And we saw your film you and I just got to know each other even as friends and colleagues and doing jam sessions. But Faith of Angels was like, oh, that's exactly in line with our brand. And we've already cracked this nut of distribution and sales and financing certain debt pieces of a film. But we care more about our brand. We care more about the content we're going to deliver to the consumers out there. We think there's a market for films like this. So it's great. We're very excited about that film and the exposure that it's gotten. And hopefully it just keeps going.
Yeah. Well, Kirk, we brought you on today because we've been documenting the process of releasing these 2 films over the last few months. And where we are right now is Faith of Angels is kind of winding down theatrically. And we are now looking at, okay, what are the digital distribution, the foreign distribution options for the film? And so just as we've had Purdy on and we've had Michelle Moore on to talk about their parts of the process, we wanted to have you on, really go deep on what does digital distribution look like? What is sales? What is the role that you play? So Garrett, where do you want to start? You're probably thinking about this even more than I am right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great question. I'd love to know. I think it's important for independent filmmakers who might be listening to this podcast to know, first of all, who is Heartstrings? What is your business model? And then what is your role with Faith of Angels and getting it out to the domestic streaming market?
Yeah, I can answer a little bit of that in reverse order, maybe. I was thinking about this, had a conversation with a friend this morning who's not in the film industry, and distribution has the same definition to him as it does for us. And so I just, for the heck of it, looked up dictionary. Does anyone still use a dictionary? I guess I used Google. But I've got the Oxford definition here of distribution: the action of sharing something out among a number of recipients. So distribution is taking a product and sharing it with a number of people. That's basically what distribution is. And so I'm a big advocate of self-distribution, but I'm not a big advocate of doing your own root canals, right? Just because you've got this product and you might, and Darren, we talk about this on LinkedIn all the time. Should filmmakers do self-distribution? That's what Heartstrings started with. We're getting kind of tired of the various channels you had to go through, multiple sales agents, then some other sales agent becomes a distributor, and the distributor is really a platform. And so if you could just get your product to a number of recipients, you are the distributor. But the same way you hire your DP and your editor and you pay your actors and you pay your catering people, maybe we should think about our own films as a business. And maybe we should be in charge of distribution and sales and marketing and raise the money. So Heartstrings saw that. We've been talking about this for a couple of years now. And we've distributed our own films before. We've done it. It's hard. And we've failed at it. And we've also succeeded at it. and we build those relationships. So what Heartstrings really is a brand that's going to take content with character to the marketplace. And we're the curators of it. We want a good quality film. We want with a good message and content we believe in. And then to get to that market, it is that distribution definition. But you need advertising money, marketing money. Sometimes films need debt financing, finishing funds. There's different things we could get into about debt financing, but Heartstrings Media Capital started as a way, we're not going to finance equity of a film. That's not the game we're in. We're going to curate content with characters. So we're going to add value by getting to those other platforms, spending some money on marketing, P&A, helping coordinate unique ideas. I think Faith of Angels did a great job getting in hundreds of theaters nationwide. And we want to keep doing that. And so that's what Heartstrings Media Capital is. And we're looking for filmmakers that understand that their film is art, but it is even probably more commerce. And it's a marriage of art and commerce.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah. So what does that look like for an independent filmmaker that says, look, here I am, I've done my theatrical release, or I'm not doing a theatrical release, or I want to now distribute the film, but like you say, I don't want to do my own root canal.
Yeah.
As passionate as I am about my own teeth, I want an expert to help me do that. What does that look like?
Yeah, I think, the best thing you can do is talk, whether it's our company or others, talk before you make your film, do your homework, find out who the market is, find out if there is a market for it. And bring your distribution partners and your marketing partners on early, even while you're casting and budgeting and looking for locations. And maybe you'll end up finding product placement as a way to make additional. But if you do that early, I go back to supply and demand. If you had, I'll use the Walmart example. My buddy and I were talking about this morning, but let's say you had a great invention. It's the electric broom. And you make 1 million of them, you manufacture them in Brainerd, Minnesota, and then you take 1 million, you take 3 semi-truck loads full of these electric brooms to Walmart and sell them, and they're like, we don't need that. We already have 5 robot vacuums, and they're fine. This was a bad idea. So in the real world of commerce, usually there's supply and demand. Usually there's a buyer that needs, they say, we love your prototype. Could you print 1 million of those? Then you go backwards and make your movie. In this case, or print, manufacture and produce 1 million electric brooms. But in film, reverse engineer back into the buyer. Okay,
so the scenario I described, in your experience, your expertise is saying that's a second choice. That's a plan B. Plan A is, as an independent filmmaker, hey, I got an idea, or I got a script, or I have a skill. And I'm going to now talk to you early. So you say, hey, do you think that there's a market for a movie about a boy that's lost in a mine and made by so-and-so and starring so-and-so?
Yeah. And if we believe in the script and the filmmaker and we see that potential, we can be a part of that. Let's build the audience. Let's go navigate that. Let's, in film, there are still some places that are pre-buying content, but at the very least, you could do some research and development and figure out some pre-sale estimates of, hey, what is this film going to be worth with these actors in this genre, with this director? And it is hard. It's not like there's buyers out there just waiting to finance your film for X number of millions of dollars. You got to build that relationship. They might, if they like you, they have a relationship with you, but do as much research as you can early on before you make the film. I think that's the thing I see over and over again, because when filmmakers bring me their film and it's already done, a lot of times it is not going to have a market. It's just not going to make any money, and it's who wants to be the deliverer of bad news.
Yeah. So that's a tough situation, and having been in that situation before, that's an uncomfortable spot, because you've made a film and now you have to find an audience. I think that's a lot of the tone of this podcast is, hey, start early in building your audience. And if you've got a following of 50 people on YouTube, that's your audience. And you budget and plan and target that audience with a little growth, hopeful. But don't, yeah. Okay, so moving on to that, we do have a film. We got Faith of Angels. You guys saw it. Heartstrings signed up, said, hey, we're going to now take this to distributors. Excuse me, you are the sales agent that is taking this to streamers. What are those conversations like? What can an independent filmmaker expect to hear from a buyer that's going to go, okay, we're in the right path?
Yeah, things have changed so much and so fast. And maybe for future episodes, you guys could go into what's AI going to do for the distribution landscape. It is going to affect us all, whether we like it or not. What it sounds like with some of these buyers is a variety of things. Like we have an opening in 26, so you got to wait a year. Or we have a Christmas movie, for example. It's coming out in North America this year, but the international distributor / sales agent wants to release it next year. It's not the most ideal situation, and we didn't want to hear that, but it is what it is. So you get those kind of questions. When it actually comes to licensing, some streamers are really subscription-based, something like Netflix, but some are advertising-based, like Tubi. And so you're approaching those differently, and those contracts that they're offering are being adjusted a little bit too. A lot of it has to do, devil in the details stuff, but it really is a matter of how long does the platform believe that they can monetize your content.
Mm-hmm.
And then on your end, as a filmmaker, you're trying to navigate how long do we want to give each different kind of platform, and how many different avenues are there? There's advertising, AVOD, advertising video on demand, subscription-based video on demand. There's cable TV. There's still DVDs. Walmart will still buy, who knows, you might have 50,000 copies DVDs in Walmart still. That's still a market. So you're trying to navigate where's the best place. And some want all rights, meaning they want to take your film and do everything with it or nothing with it. And you lose a lot of control there too. So I think for streaming, it's getting really challenging. I always ask independent filmmakers, what are the last 3 movies that you spent money on to watch? And you're an independent filmmaker. It better be independent films that you spent money on. But that's the audience. So again, if you don't know your audience, streamers I think are guessing too, but you're starting to see more specific things. Like PureFlix now has their own platform. It's pretty specific. Shudder and some of these other, there's an app for everything now.
Yeah, Angel Studios
has its own.
Has their own app, yeah.
Yeah.
So here's one of the devil in the details maybe questions is like, do you think the landscape is even friendly for independent filmmakers anymore? Like, is it worth trying to get your movie on Netflix? Because it feels to me like, because they're more of a tech company than they are a studio or a film distribution company, they have learned how to extract as much money, profit from the marketplace as possible, including from the filmmakers. And that's, I think, a bold statement, but it's what I'm seeing because like 10 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever it was, you could get an upfront payment from a Netflix or a similar type platform. Whereas now it's all streaming based. It's based on hours watched or minutes watched or, purchases, which you can't do on Netflix, but like you're getting fractions of a cent on an hour streamed. And they're basically saying, look, you can become a commodity in our marketplace and see how it performs. And they're taking no interest in it. This is a pretty blanket statement here. I'm sure there are exceptions, but like, is it something that indie filmmakers should even be pursuing anymore, trying to get a film on Netflix?
If they do, they should do it before they make their film. Have Netflix pay for it. Just tell them what your budget is, and if Netflix is willing to cover that budget, and that's the only time you're ever going to see money from Netflix. Let them finance your film. But if they didn't want your film early on, they probably won't want it when you're done. And the number will go down. So I don't know if it's worth it, but if you can get a Netflix or any kind of app like that, streamer, to finance your film, great. But let's just say you made a movie for $1 million. Don't expect Netflix to give you that $1 million back. Their licensing fee, and I'm just spitballing, this isn't for any specific project, but their licensing fee might be 5 years for $100,000. And you might find that all your other revenues are not as great because now people can just see your movie on Netflix and you're not getting paid per view or per click or per minute watched. You got your licensing fee. You're not going to get a report from Netflix tracking the money side of it. Yeah. You've gotten your licensing fee. So I wouldn't say
they're not your audience. Like, you don't get an email address, you don't get the names of people who streamed it. Like, you get nothing. Right. That's all their audience too.
Right. Yeah. So it's probably worth it if you have a relationship there, and they have a development department and they've got a lot of money. They're making a lot of big things. So if you can get in with them, probably worth it. But it's and I would say in terms of independent films, I think there's better options for the filmmaker. By the way, we've talked about this off camera a few times. Put money in your marketing, put money in your budget for marketing. If you have a $2 million movie, maybe $500,000 should be for marketing. A pretty big chunk of it, maybe $2 million. Maybe you should spend as much as you spent on the production itself, because this is a game of sales and marketing and exposure. And if people don't know about your film, they're not going to watch it.
Well, and Jason Blum is on the record saying that marketing is easily 50%, if not more, of the success of his movies. And so if that's true, if 50% of the success is the marketing, well, it probably makes sense to have an equal marketing budget to your production budget.
Yeah. I'm wondering why they don't teach this in film school. I didn't go to film school, but I hear about it all the time. They don't teach this in film school. They're teaching you how to get the film in the can, color correct.
So, Kirk, what is the ideal scenario? What is your ideal scenario then for an independent filmmaker that's listening to this, says, hey, I don't want to walk away from this hopeless. Like, yeah. How does it work? How do I make my next movie wisely?
Well, if you believe in your talent, and if you believe in your story, vet it, get other people to believe in the story before you make it. I think there's a lot of hope for independent filmmakers right now. A lot. Because there are platforms that need content. But if you understand that, let's say you mentioned Blumhouse, let's say there's a horror film company out there and they're willing to give you a $200,000 for your film. Maybe your budget should be $150,000. Like, back into those things, understand the market, understand the value of your art. Imagine this. Imagine you're a painter and you're in your garage, you're painting a masterpiece and you love it, and everyone loves it. And an art gallery picks it up and they put it on display, but no one bought it.
Yeah.
That's what your art was worth. It was only worth what someone paid for it. So when you understand that, you can actually go back to your most favorite project that you love, that has artistic value, a great story, and then navigate carefully into the marketplace. And I think what filmmakers can do is, like I said, surround yourself with awesome people that can help you with your vision, because they're going to come back and say, here's the numbers. Don't do your own root canal, right? Like, I would say have a distributor and a producer with distribution experience on your team. And I would say vet the heck out of your script and get a lot of coverage and get a lot of other industry feedback and find out what's your competition doing. So when you know that, you can still be an artist, but you can be an informed artist.
Okay, so that's so then that ideal scenario for where does Heartstrings play into that? Where do you and Heartstrings play into that?
Yeah, we're looking for filmmakers that have that understanding, like they really care about the audience and the consumers, and they want to deliver awesome content to that audience. I think Faith of Angels hit it right on the head. I mean, you have based on a true story, is a very Even Netflix will say people want based on a true story stuff. You got a great film, great script, great crew, great actors. You have a good product there. And because you guys have been in this space for a while, and I know Heartstrings, ours isn't necessarily all faith-based. We're doing family-friendly, we call it inspirational or feel-good content. But we do know that there's not enough content for those audiences. They tell us all the time, not enough faith-based films are being made, or not enough feel-good, family-friendly PG movies are being made. So I think that's what you should do early on, is build your team. Don't try to do everything yourself. Don't do your own root canals is one of my go-to slogans that I talk about all the time. But it really, start thinking about it, it does take a village.
Yeah.
And so I would rather own 13% of something that's successful than 100% of something that failed.
So it sounds like you said, have them on the team. It means as early as development is starting, as soon as you have a script, a director, you've attached a producer, at the same time you're attaching a producer to help with production, you should be attaching a distributor or a sales agent that can inform the casting, that can inform the budget, that can inform the strategy for marketing, so you can reverse engineer how you're going to market the film from day one, and not once the film is, in the can and ready for the marketplace. Like, that's a year or more of time that you could have been marketing the film and building that audience if you start from day one and start just kind of showing the behind the scenes and the process of it all. That's
great.
So no, go ahead, Garrett.
Go ahead. I was just going to add on to that. And it's very informative, because then we're saying, as the filmmaker, I hear that and I go, oh, that sounds like so much work. And like, it sounds so uncreative to like go and say, okay, foreign sales agent, who should I cast in this role? And yet on the flip, here we are on the flip side of that, going, not having done that, and talking now to a foreign sales agent saying, yeah, we'll try to sell your movie, but should you had maybe early on cast this individual, it would have been an easy sale.
Yeah.
And so I think you're right. I mean, either way, you have to swallow that pill.
And also, I just thought of something, you both touched on it, but it's interesting that what if you're the writer and director? You probably don't have time to produce. And you don't need just one producer. You might need 3 or 4. There's different, for people outside of the film industry, they might not know this, but there's executive producers, line producers, creative producers. Everyone gets these producer credits, but it's really understanding on your team who's in charge of what. And if you're the writer director, I would highly recommend, even if you found money from Uncle John who's going to finance your film, again, don't do your own root canal. Hire people. Bring on people that believe in your. And one of your producers on your team or a foreign sales agent partner might say, yeah, had you cast this person, there'd be more value, because sales and distribution has a lot to do with what's on the poster. And I've talked to foreign sales agents who said, I sold a movie from a poster and we hadn't even written a script yet. That's sales.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good spot to be in for a filmmaker. And I think it's necessary, unless we want to kind of stay in these very small, only talking to my audience type movies. Great, I can continue to do that. But if the goal is to build and expand an audience, then the people that I bring in early on, Darren has an audience, and Kirk Heartstrings has an audience, and we say, okay, we just signed an agreement for foreign rights to Faith of Angels, and they are interested in looking at other projects that we're doing early on, saying, hey, what are you doing early on, and how can we help in that process? So what you say is true, is validated.
Yeah.
And it goes back to LinkedIn, like Darren said. Now you have something to talk about on LinkedIn. Now you're going to have engagement with people, and you can say, here's what we learned on this film. You add value as a producer. The more times you've done it, the more times you've failed, and the more times you've succeeded, you add value. I just encourage filmmakers to not feel like it's sort of bureaucratic or like, oh, this is kind of boring now, I've lost control. More about building a team. Your film is a business.
Yeah, 100%. So it's just been interesting to hear kind of the big picture of how sales plays into it. Can we get into the dirt a little bit, like into the grunt work of, we talked to Purdy and Susan Tuckett about what does a distributor do, and they're like, Monday mornings are hell. They just are 20 hours of calling and emailing every single person, doing all the things. Now we're sitting here with Purdy, and now they have 2 films at the same time. We're like, well, keep fighting for Faith of Angels too. I know you got to do work on Carpenter. So what does the day-to-day look like? Are you calling people? Are you building relationships? Are you going to markets? Like, what does your role as the head of development and acquisitions and the president of the company look like?
My role is different than some of the other partners, and I'm head of development, so I'm finding new content, folks like yourself, managing those relationships, trying to communicate internally with our own team and some other distributors and platforms where we think we're asking them all the time, what is it you're looking for? What can we do for you? And they say, bring us content like this. And then I have to go back and try to find that kind of content that meets the criteria of what we're hoping for. And each film has a different role. I mean, we're doing some debt financing on some films where that's what we did. We did the debt financing piece. We believed in the film, and we're happy to support it in other ways. We do work with some sales guys once in a while who say, man, I'm on the phone all day just selling. And I'm personally not the cold calling type. I'm the relationship type. So I'm going to put out feelers to distributors or platforms and say, look, I'm not going to pitch Faith of Angels to Blumhouse, because I already know. And I've met them a couple times. I know exactly what they want, and you can Google them. You pretty much know what they want. So then you sort of fine tune it. And then there's some hindsight 2020. Some projects like Faith of Angels, we came in pretty late in the game. There are other movies where we come in earlier. I know one of the questions we talked about off camera a couple of weeks ago, Darren, was the concept of a day and date release. And so a lot of what I like to do is go to distributors who do a day and date release just in general and say, hey, look, if I had a film for you, what would be your strategy? Versus cold calling them and selling them something right now that I'm not sure that I want to make sure they want something like that.
Can you explain, because the audience may not even know what a day and date release is. How's that different from a theatrical?
The idea of it coming out in theaters and digitally at the same time. When you're on Dish TV or Dish Network or DirecTV and some other platforms where you'll see a trailer and it'll say in theaters now. And that sometimes gets you better placement on those platforms. Now you're on a movie that we have coming out pretty soon. We're getting a banner ad on DirecTV and Dish Network saying in theaters now. And so that's the day and date. It's the idea of let's release this film theatrically, because honestly, who has time to go to a theater anymore or the money to go to a theater? And then when they do, there's so much competition, and we're all competing against a handful of Marvel Comics movies for that. So then if they can't make it to the theater, isn't it great that it's also available on a pay-per-view channel?
Well, very cool, Kirk. So, we are getting close to your time. We don't want to take up too much of your day. You've been very generous. So I think one thing that's interesting is we've talked about this strategy a lot of like bringing a distributor in early, as early as possible. I think today's the earliest we've mentioned, which is like in the same day you call your producer, you call your distributor and get them on the team. So how do they do that? Like, is there a way to reach out to not just you and Heartstrings, but like in general, what does that outreach look like? Because I know a lot of people, especially in this audience, are faith-based, are inspirational, family-friendly filmmakers. So where do they look and how do they reach out to people? What should they be thinking about in that process?
I'd even add, what materials should they prepare for you?
Yeah. Pitch decks. We like pitch decks. It could be a creative lookbook, just here's the vision of it. But the more you can put in your pitch deck the research and development that you've done on your own, the more you can make this pitch deck make business sense. I mean, it should really be a business plan. And we could talk about that some other time. But put as much material as you can. Do a sizzle reel or a mood reel if you can to show us what the movie's going to look like in your mind. And then again, if you're the writer director, maybe stay in that position and look for a producing partner, someone that will lead the charge for you, and decide, do you want to be in charge, or are you willing to share the responsibility? Maybe you just need to delegate that duty. So how to reach out to a distributor? It's not, again, if you bring on a producer with experience, maybe that's their job. And so as a team, you figure out, okay, we've shopped this around. We found a couple of distributors. You may not sign the distributor on day one of casting or script development, but you might have had a conversation with them to find out whether or not they're interested in this product. It might be like my example with Walmart. They might not want 1 million electric brooms right now. They might tell you, go make this other kind of movie. And you might, I'm sorry to say it, but you might abandon one of your projects for another one. If you're a filmmaker who just wants to make awesome content, have a lot of content ready to make and go with the one that makes the most sense.
Yeah. Especially early on.
And reaching out to a distributor just is about relationships.
Awesome. It also sounds like it's a lot about packaging, on both sides. When you're reaching out to a distributor to get on board with your movie early on, it's about, here's the genre, here's the actors we're looking at, here's the budget range we're thinking about, here's where we're going to film it, here's who is involved, and all of that goes into the pitch deck so that you, in 5 minutes, can go, oh, I get what this is. And this either does look like the stuff that we do or doesn't look like the stuff that we do. As a producer, I do the same thing. Someone sends me a script, and the first thing I say is, well, what's the budget that you're thinking about doing this at? And if they say 500, 700K, I go, it's probably not for me, because I don't do those budget ranges, because you can't afford my rate at those budget ranges. And so I instantly, instead of taking the 2 hours to read the script and to consider it and do all those things, I just go, hey, maybe you should talk to so-and-so, 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 because they're earlier on and they're hungry and looking for projects, whereas I'm not right now. So it's all packaging. And that's the same thing that you talked about with the sales agents. They go to a market and they can sell a movie to a distributor or to a platform off of a poster. It's because that's packaging on one page. Who's in it? What genre is it? You should be able to tell from the poster, and who's involved, right? If it's the writer-director of Saratov Approach, then all of a sudden you're going, oh, I love that movie. I'll probably like this one too. And so packaging is maybe something that we need to spend some more time on, Garrett, in another episode of what does that process look like? But it sounds like it's essential early on in attracting a distributor before you have money, before you have the project. And it's really important once you're selling the project.
Yeah.
I think it's as a filmmaker, then I'm hearing that and I'm saying, look, my job early on is to make the distributor's job easy. Like make that an easy yes. And so, like you say, Darren, it's packaging. And I'm amazed at the and I say this on this podcast. This is probably gonna come back and haunt me, but I'm amazed at the lack of ability for. Well, let's see. Let me not blame anybody. I'm amazed at my lack of ability to communicate my vision to somebody. And so all of these tools, like a vision board and a rip reel, and an actor that's already agreed to do it, that is going to help communicate my vision clearly to somebody, so that they go, oh, that's easy. Whereas it might be in my head, I might go, hey, this is a cool movie about a boy that gets lost in a mine. That distributor has no idea what's in my head. And they might think, oh, is it a comedy? Is it a horror? I mean, what is this? So I have to really make that very, very clear.
Yeah. Well, and I think it speaks to what Kirk kind of alluded to, is like, who's on your team? And so many of us think that independent means alone, and it doesn't. It means just not dependent on other outside sources. So like, you do as much as you can on your own, but in the same vein as you wouldn't do your own root canal, you still need to acquire people who are better at things than you are. You're not acting in and shooting and lighting and doing sound on your movie at the same time. You're doing one role. You were the writer and then you were the director. And you said, I'm not going to produce at the same time as I'm directing because that's insane. And so you hired a producer. So in the same way, hire someone to do a really great pitch deck for you. Hire someone to do a really great sizzle reel for you. There might be other people who would love nothing more than to do that for a living. Just create sizzle reels for concepts, for projects every day.
It's interesting you bring that up. A lot of times the filmmakers want to do the trailer, but the distributor redoes it. Ask yourself this: who do you think knows more about movie trailers? Probably the distributor. They're the ones with the poster that sold it at the foreign market.
Right.
They know what 60 seconds of that movie needs to be in there for their buyers. The filmmakers, a lot of times, I feel this way too. When I've made a movie, we lose control of our vision that way, but the distributor, the seller, and the buyer know what their consumers want.
Right. It's because that's
so let them recut.
Yeah.
Gosh,
so cool. Well, Kirk, where can people learn more about you and about Heartstrings? Where do you send people to reach out to you? Do you have an email address where they can send their pitch deck? Like, what's the best way for people to get in touch?
Well, LinkedIn is pretty easy to find me there.
Full circle.
And Heartstrings has a website. I'm going to say it wrong, so heartstrings.media. And my email's kirk@heartstrings.media. But I think, back to your point, get that pitch deck ready and your vision ready, and then show how you're building your team and be open to expanding that team. That's kind of the way I would like to. I won't read a script usually, like you said. I would prefer to see the pitch deck and the mood reel. I'll know within a couple minutes if it fits what we're looking for.
Well, and I bet you get bonus points.
Hopefully you get lots of people sending.
I was going to say bonus points if you say, I heard you on the Truly Independent podcast.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
And maybe we'll make Faith of Angels Part 2.
There we go.
Stuck in the mine again.
Didn't learn his lesson.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kirk. Great seeing you. I'm sure we'll be chatting soon as we do. So appreciate you coming on. Hey, indie filmmakers and movie lovers. This show is sponsored by Purdy Distribution. Since 2011, they've been bringing incredible independent films to theaters, like Garrett Batty's The Saratov Approach, T.C. Christensen's Love Kennedy, and McLean Nelson's Once I Was a Beehive. They've worked with top-notch directors like Mitch Davis and Mark Goodman, specializing in family, faith-based, and funny films. This year alone, they've released hits with JK Studios like Go West and Villains Inc., and have even branched out internationally with films shot in South Africa and Japan. Purdy Distribution works closely with indie filmmakers, designing personalized distribution plans, whether it's a theatrical release or straight to streaming on platforms like Amazon, iTunes, Google, and more. If you have a PG or PG-13 film ready for the world, think about reaching out to Purdy Distribution. They're approachable and knowledgeable, ready to help you visualize your film's distribution. Even if your film isn't fully polished, they can offer valuable guidance. Plus, if you need that crucial distribution piece for investor packages, Purdy Distribution can provide a letter of intent to distribute, helping you secure funding without locking you into a contract. Mark your calendars for Purdy Distribution's upcoming releases: Tokyo Cowboy on August 30th, the digital release of Thabo and the Rhino Case on September 1st, Faith of Angels in theaters on September 12th, Villains Inc. on Amazon and iTunes on October 1st, and The Carpenter on November 1st. To stay updated on these releases and more, sign up for their newsletter at purdydistribution.com. That's Purdie distribution.com. Now, back to the show. Oh man, Kirk, what a stud. That was awesome.
Great conversation with Kirk. Man, I love what those guys are doing there. I just looked up their webpage and at heartstrings.media, and it's fun to see the collection of movies that they are getting ready to distribute.
Yeah. I think one of my biggest takeaways, and it's something that's kind of been reinforced over and over and over through the process of releasing Faith of Angels, is like how essential it is for independent filmmakers to build a bigger team so much earlier on than we think is reasonable, right? Because I think we go, well, a distributor's not going to come on until the movie's made. In reality, they would prefer, it's not just Kirk that said this, but every distributor I've talked to or sales agent is like, oh, bring us in as early as possible because we want to be involved in the strategy. We want to be involved in the casting. We want to be involved in the budgeting and where it's going to end up. And all of that is so much easier to do before the movie is, fundraised and filmed and delivered. So I think that's a crusade I'm about to go on or continued on is like indie filmmakers start building your team for marketing at the same time as you're building your team for production because they're equal parts in the success of your film in the marketplace.
I think as a filmmaker, that's a scary proposition, right? Because you say, hey, I've got this idea, I've got this story, I have a vision, and I want my voice out there or whatever it is. I want to tell this story. Great. And it's scary to bring on a partner so early on that there's that maybe reservation of, am I going to lose this creative control? Or even worse, am I going to lose the opportunity that I want, which, whether it's to direct or produce or whatever it is involving larger, bigger, distributors or whatever it is, going to risk that opportunity. So I get it. It's a give and take, but I think that there's value in having these partners and getting to make your movie, rather than I've got to continue to shrink down my budget and you're going to have to make compromises eventually. So maybe make them early on with partners that can help you get your movie done.
Yeah.
I think also as you're bringing those on, sorry, Darren, I'm kind of harping on this. It. Protect yourself. Like make sure that that's in your contract. Like, hey, yes, we want to involve this distributor up front, but because they are bringing money, not like, yeah, we're going to help you get your movie done. Can you raise the money for it? And then you're like, well, I'm doing all of this that I would be doing either way. And yet now you own part of it. So make sure that they bring equal experience or whatever it is, the equal equity that you are bringing.
Yeah. When I want to harken back to, I think it was last week where we were talking about the spectrum between art and commerce. And if you want to make money from your movies so that you can make more of them, you do need to make some considerations about the marketplace. And what better people to do it than those who are in it every single day having conversations with the marketplace. That's your distributor and your sales agents. But the thing I constantly hear is like, well, I want to make films. I want to make auteur films. I want to be Wes Anderson, and he doesn't compromise. It's like, well, hold on a second. Like, he probably did early on. And the reason he doesn't have to compromise now is because he's earned it. Like, if you've done the films that Wes Anderson has done, which are just an incredible oeuvre of like body of work. There, how about that word for today's word of the day? But like, he's earned it, right? He doesn't compromise now, and people and line up to distribute and fund his next movie because they want to be a part of this art project that Wes Anderson is going to create. And you don't get to do that on your first film. I'm sorry. Like, you've got to either make a really great art film short that cost under 30 grand, right? And didn't lose a whole bunch of money for a lot of people. And then like unquestionably, it's the best thing out there at the time. There's a guy on Twitter right now, Luke something, I can look it up and put a link in the show notes, but he put out a short film and it's done like 4 million views in 2-3 weeks on Twitter. And now he's releasing it on YouTube, and it's opened up all these doors, and he's got Ryan Johnson and Edgar Wright and big filmmakers that are commenting on it going, this is amazing, great work. Like, it's undeniably at that level, right? So whatever he does next, he earned it because he created something that was valuable enough in the marketplace, even for free, where people are like lining up and talking to him about his next project. You got to earn it. And that's the other hard thing about putting your work in front of and connecting it with the marketplace is sometimes it's confrontational. You think it's more valuable than the market does. And that's really hard pill to swallow, but it kind of speaks to what you were saying of like, yeah, well, what are you making? Are you making an art piece? Then make an art piece. But if you're making something for the marketplace, I'd say go all the way and really make it that 50-50 partnership between the marketing, the marketplace, the sales, and the art of the film that you're trying to make.
Yeah. It's the tortured artist scenario, but yeah, no, it's very good. Okay, well, speaking of earning it,
Yeah.
let's take a brief look at our box office for the weekend. Again, we're recording this October 22nd, so our weekend is off of October 18th through 20th.
Mm-hmm.
Smile 2 came out as number one. I will mention this, we don't want to spend a ton of time on box office. Wild Robot, Kirk mentioned doing this day and date release. Wild Robot came out on September 27th. It's 2 weeks later, it was promoting their rent and buy now for home viewing. And they are still in the box office. They're number 2 film at 10 million.
Yeah.
But, just over the weekend, we could have rented it at our house for the price of going to a movie. So that's a really interesting model.
Yeah, very interesting. And we have guests in the future that we can talk to about this strategy of day and date versus strictly theatrical, because there is some data around which one is arguably better especially for independent filmmakers. There's a teaser for you. But let's look at our model. I think there's no new releases that are using our model that are in the top 10 or really even the top 20. There's a movie called Rumors, number 20 film on 630 screens, just under a $500 per screen average, 311,000 over the weekend. That's Bleecker Street Media. And then
that's amazing. I'm surprised that that's not higher. That's a Kate Blanchett.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be kind of this really indie bizarre type movie, but I'm really surprised it's not higher for the amount of advertising I've seen for it.
Yeah, I haven't seen much for that one, but I've also been kind of out of the loop, I think, with how much we've been doing on these movies. And then you got number 22 film, Exhibiting Forgiveness, 774 screens, 356 per screen average. So I think I want to look at again to see if my thought is holding, right? We had a low $23 million opening or number one film with Smile 2. And then the number 10 is at a 1.2. So again, I think the lower the number one is, the higher the number 10 is. That's the simplest way I can say that. And 1.2 is in the top 30% of this year's number 10 spot. Whereas on the weeks of big releases, you could be in the top 10 with a $400,000 or $500,000 opening weekend. So interesting.
All right, fun to look at those strategies. It's also amazing that number 10 and number 12 are Nightmare Before Christmas and Hocus Pocus. These are 30-plus-year-old films that are coming out, and again, in the top 10. Boy, it makes me think about doing a genre or holiday movie.
Right? I mean, you kind of have that with, I think there's totally good reason for doing a 40th anniversary of the event re-release of Faith of Angels, right, in 5 years. And a 50th anniversary. Like, you could totally play that card, especially if it kind of finds an even bigger audience on streaming and on digital and through whatever other windows we're looking at for our strategy. We look at how many people saw our movie. We're well over 50,000 people have seen our movie in theaters. That's a really great core audience to help with the digital side, that we can say, hey, now it's on streaming. Now it's on this platform. Support it. Go tell your friends, and that grows the audience even more. So it'll be fun to see. Very cool. I love diving into the numbers every week. It's one of my favorite aspects. So we do have one listener question, and it's a big question, so we can give kind of simple answers, I think, for this one, and then I'll email the guy back.
All right, I hear your hint. I'll simplify.
No, it's me. I'm the one who does too much talking. I do. I'm trying so hard today to keep it to like 60-second answers, and I'm probably failing again. Here's the question from a guy named Sean on LinkedIn, of all places. Hi, Darren. What's the best way to promote yourself and your project to get noticed without seeming desperate or boastful? So I think that caveat can help us with the containing the answer a little bit, without seeming desperate or boastful. So what do you think on this one?
I think a couple of things come to mind immediately. One is it's better to have other people talking about your movie that you can share rather than you being the one that's talking about it. So, like today for Carpenter, we have Kenny that is going to be on, Fox 13 local channel talking about Carpenter. I'm for sure going to share that. But it's nice to have somebody else talking about it, and I'm able to just share it. I think another thing is don't create something out of nothing. Like don't avoid the hashtag set life. Hey, guess what? I finished page 8 of my script. Hashtag filmmaker. No. Make a movie. And then talk about it. Like, have some proof in the pudding, right? Don't just blow smoke.
Yeah. I might push back. I might push back on that second one a little bit. I think building in public is important, but it's the framing, the way that you're framing it matters for sure.
Okay. All right.
Because my answer is, where are you coming from with the posts or the outreach and the promotion of yourself? So, there's an executive producer who I follow online on LinkedIn that posted the other day. It's like, I had an a filmmaker come to me and say, I can guarantee a 2x return on your money. And it just wasn't true. Like, he didn't have any documents supporting that, no deals in place, no nothing. And the guy was just like, I didn't even have a conversation with the guy because he's lying. He doesn't know that he's lying, but he's lying. So that's really bad framing for a conversation with somebody that can help you move your project along. So my short answer is, where are you at with your mindset? Are you in a needy place of like, I have to find a producer, I have to find the money, I have to do anything to get this project going? Because that's a really not great place to operate from. If you're showing up every day and going, I desperately need a producer, I desperately need financing, that's going to come across in the way you message people, in the way you talk to people, in the way you post. And so instead, and this is just a simple mindset shift you can make, which is, I have something that's valuable to the people who it's valuable for. And one of the best definitions of success that I've found, or how to achieve success that I've found, is a statement where he said, you've got to put the stuff that you do exceptionally well in front of the people who already overvalue what you do. So what does that mean? Well, if you are a faith-based filmmaker, then Purdy Distribution, Susan Tuckett Media, Michelle Moore PR, like all the people we've had on this podcast, Heartstrings Media, they're the people that you want to talk to because they already value faith-based, family-friendly, inspirational films. And so don't go to Blumhouse and talk to them about Faith of Angels. Go to the people who already value faith-based, family, inspirational films, right? And so realizing that you already have something that's valuable and that there is a market for it out there. And then it's just about testing the messaging and going, okay, did this work? Did this work? It's exactly what I said at the start of today's episode. I was messaging a whole bunch of people saying, hey, have you ever thought about investing in film? Or have you ever done film investing before? And that was not a great lead-in, right? Because it makes them think that I'm just after their money, which I am. But that's not a great framing for the conversation. Instead, being able to change the messaging and say, hey, I see that you're spending time in these kind of film circles. I'd love to have a chat and see what you're working on. Taking interest in them. What are they looking for? What do they want to do? That's how I found out that Kirk had money to put into projects. It's like, okay, well, that worked way better. So now I'm going to use that messaging approach instead. So shift the mindset.
Well, and I think your mindset. Yeah. I think your mindset changes there because, if whether this was a slip or not, you said, "Oh, I don't want them to think I'm just after their money," which I am, which I know you, and you're not, because you are after an experience. You are providing an experience for them to make money.
Yes,
right. That's what you're after. And as a filmmaker, I think the minute we start saying, "I just give me money, I just want to make the film. I don't know how you're going to get it back," that's where we lose. We say, look, I honestly believe, and here is a method that you are going to make money, and I get to make a film that's like mutually beneficial.
Yes. Thank you for calling me out on that. That's important.
Yeah, you are not after their money.
Yes. Thank you. I'll just.
Okay, so I didn't mean to derail.
No, that was perfect. I'm glad you did, because it's an important takeaway. Like, you can't just be after money. It can't be dumb money. It can't be any money. It can't be expensive money. You need the relationships there, and you need people to trust you and believe that you can deliver the value that you say you're going to deliver. because a lot of times it's writing a check and then you don't really have much involvement from them in the process going forward. It's like, okay, let us know when it's ready. That's a lot of trust and faith in people, which is why it's hard to raise millions of dollars for indie projects, especially from first time and early on filmmakers. Okay, I think we've said enough today. Great episode.
Great. Yeah. Fun conversation. Thanks for having Kirk on.
Yeah. We've got some more guests in the pipeline, which I'm really excited for. We're going to be talking more about distribution. And then I've got someone whose name has come up many times in this podcast. I'm so excited. I'm not even going to tell you who it is today. All right. See you guys in the next one. Later.
Thanks, Darren.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Truly Independent. To join us on the journey, be notified of new episodes and screenings, and ask us questions about today's episode, head over to 3coinpro.com/podcast and put in your name and an email address. If you're a fan of the show, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast app and be sure to share this episode with a friend. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Our intro and outro music is Election Time by Kjartan Abel.